Good evening, world, and welcome to another A24 On the Rocks vibe discussion, the podcast where we dive deep
you know the struggle,
into the world of film. Yes, I do. And we like to serve up cinematic insights with a twist of lemon, or maybe some whiskey, but always with a little bit of love. Tonight, we're shaking things up with a cocktail of raw emotion and unfiltered storytelling as we tackle one of the most harrowing films of the 21st century, Requiem for a Dream. Directed by Darren Aronofsky and featuring a powerhouse cast including Burstyn, Jared Leto, Jennifer Connelly, and Marlon Wayans, Requiem for a Dream is a visceral journey into the heart of addiction and its devastating effects on dreams and reality. From its unforgettable score by Clint Mansell to the unflinching performances, Requiem for a Dream pulls no punches. We'll be dissecting the film's intense visuals, narrative structure, and its impact on the generations of viewers. But I'm not alone. Oh, no. I have my merry band of movie misfits with me. It's the Kiskas. Tell the people what you're drinking on this fine affair. How you guys doing tonight?
Hello, everyone. My name's Eric, and I'm drinking a Jefferson's Reserve very old batch tonight. A $50 bottle, which I will call the upscale mailman bottle, but it's like an upscale bottle for the mail carriers that have made career and have been around for a little bit and made a little bit more money. But that does not mean that Louis DeJoy shouldn't give us what we deserve in the upcoming contract. We want fair wages that are updated for inflation, Mr. DeJoy. Give us what we want.
Mic drop. That's Eric, everybody.
And I'm drinking the elixir of the common folk that just anyone should have access to freely and readily and healthily.
Oh, yes.
That is On the Rocks.
Water on the rocks.
Nice cold H2O.
Props. And I'm rounding out a bottle of Four Roses small batch whiskey bourbon. It's the end of the bottle. I was asking if it was responsible enough to pour it all into one glass at the start of this, and I did it anyway. So here we are. You know, it's fine.
A24 vibe discussion.
All right, viewers, listeners, all those that are on this pod, grab your favorite drink, whether it's something strong to match this film's intensity or something soothing to help you process what you just watched. You know, either way, let's join us as we unravel the layers of this ridiculous, ridiculous film. All right, guys, I know this is not your first viewing of Requiem for a Dream, correct?
Not correct.
Wait, oh yeah, it was your first.
Not correct.
Yeah.
Kelly, this was your...
Yeah.
Holy crap. Okay. So Eric and I both have seen this before, and Kelly, this was your very first viewing.
Correct.
Ooh. All right, I need to circle back around. So when I watched this, I watched it in college for the very first time, and I watched it because it was that fucked up drug movie, and that's all I really knew at the time. It was honestly one of those things where you kind of hear it in circles because it was introduced in the late 2000s, right? And it became one of those cult classics through word of mouth. For no other reason than it was just something so off the wall. Eric, do you remember the first time that you watched Requiem for a Dream? Sorry, literally 2000.
Yeah, I was going to say.
2000 on the nose. Sorry.
I think it was in college for sure. It was definitely like late at night. Everybody was just like, yeah, you know, we're kind of fucked up. Let's watch something that like, you know, puts our mind in a different space. And this was not the space I wanted to go to.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's one of those films that everybody tells you, oh yeah, it's like kind of a drug film. And it's really not that at all. It right. messes up your brain if you go into it thinking that you're going to see kind of a trippy film. And then it's just like this slow descent into anxiety.
Right. And how the impact changes on subsequent viewings for you and I versus someone like Kelly who's seeing it for the very first time. All right, Kelly. So this is your very first reaction. I know there's probably a ton that you want to jump in on this, but what was your initial like visceral reaction coming out from seeing it for the first time?
Yeah, I'll say the expectation of this movie was I've seen Train Spotting. And I thought this was basically like Train Spotting, but with a bluer hue on top of it and a different pretty boy casted for the lead role. I was not prepared for it to be unlike any other movie I've ever seen. Even subject matter aside, editing alone There is nothing that I've seen in movie form quite like that. Maybe some like TikToks like that or something, but it is a movie made for someone with like ADD. And it's really, I think that's a huge reason why this movie, I mean, I would consider it like it has a cult following. Like this is a movie that's like super famous, and even subject matter aside, there's no other movie that's quite edited like that. And I also didn't expect that the soundtrack would absolutely rip. I knew the famous song, but the rest of it was amazing. And of course, like this area and this time of movies, like The Matrix has an amazing soundtrack. This is 1 year later, and this soundtrack's amazing too. And kind of like techno hip hop, like influenced as well. It was so good. That part was like super enjoyable. Even with everything else going on, I was like, at least this music is amazing. So yeah, lots of thoughts, but really the editing is what every time someone's described this movie to me, they don't say, and also this. So that's a huge part, I think, of what sets this movie apart and makes it a lot different from a movie like Trainspotting.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think a lot of that, or if all of that, has to do with the approach of Darren Aronofsky's direction and his image on what he wanted this to be. He talks about it as being, his goal was to create an urban fable, or to come up with a way to make something so standalone that it was super intentional and not just a film, but something that honestly he accomplished, and making something standalone and something totally unique and different. And I think you definitely got that. So his direction is often described as intense and immersive. Clearly in this film, this is exactly what he's going for. So Eric, how do you think his approach contributed to the film's overall emotional impact? Like directly Darren Aronofsky's ability to kind of inflect his own, thoughts and emotion into this film.
Okay, so I think we all, like if you're an A24 fan, you know Darren Aronofsky probably from The Whale, and you probably know him from Black Swan, and he's always known for disturbing body horror, actually. Like it's always something disturbing. There's a little bit of body horror, and it makes you think a little bit more than other films. And I would say that's a huge influence on A24 in general. But also, like, this film is so fastly cut, fastly edited, and then they did so much with how little the budget is. Like, the budget, I believe, was $4.5 million. And this is, like, the Class A example of how to make a film for $4.5 million and make it feel like so much more than it actually is. And how he does that is he makes everything feel very claustrophobic. It's very aesthetic. You can tell like the camera quality isn't amazing or anything, but the lighting in this film and every single thing he places in all of his shots are very intentful, and he has complete mastery over every single thing that goes into every single shot. And if you want to make a film on a small budget, that's how you got to do it. Like, I think of Ex Machina, another film we watched, small budget, but literally everything that went into that film was purposeful, and they just did up every scene. Another film I would say this directly inspired was Good Time. When I watch this film, I think of Good Time and how that got inspired by this. New York, very fast cut, anxiety. I said in that podcast episode, just like they're shoving a pizza down your throat and you have nothing to say to stop it. And it just keeps coming. The pizza keeps coming. So that's definitely Aronofsky's like effect on this film, is that he did so much with so little budget, and everything is purposeful, intentful, and anxiety, body horror, it's all there for you.
Kelly, relatively same question. Now, you've seen The Whale, is that right?
Yeah.
So you've got some familiarity with Darren Aronofsky's work in the A24 world.
Yeah, I've seen...
What do you think about his... Yeah, what else?
I've seen The Whale, Black Swan, Mother, The Fountain.
So a lot of Darren Aronofsky.
I want to see Pi. I haven't seen it yet. That's like one I'm saving for a special occasion. But
for a podcast, maybe.
I feel like... He's not... So Eric says body horror. I don't think... I mean, there is elements of that, but it's not like a Cronenberg.
Cronenberg?
Type.
Cronenberg!
I knew I would get it wrong. That's the hesitation.
You wouldn't say the end of this film has a lot of body horror. I think so, but...
No, I don't. I wouldn't say that that's like his director stamp. I think that his like stamp throughout his movies is just like commentary on the human condition, and he really likes to lean into emotional aspects of people just grappling with life and all of the pressures that come with it, and the pressures we put on ourselves, and morality, and all like the big questions about what it means to like be a human and what it means to be living in your own mind. And I think that that would be like the stamp that I see throughout his movies, because they're all a lot different. This movie is nothing like The Whale, but it brings out some of the same emotions from me. So I feel like that's like the stamp. So when I hear that it's that same director, I'm like, okay, that does make sense. I see that common thread that was totally absent to me at first, but once it's said, it's like, of course. So I think that's what like he's known for. But yeah, this one's so different from everything else that I've seen.
I will say that none of the future films after that Aronofsky made were so fast cut and fast edited as this film, and that's because this is specifically portraying a hustler and heroin addict in New York City. So he definitely
100%.
just upped the editing for this film for sure.
Yeah. And for our listeners who are not familiar with my lack of movie prowess, I've never seen another Darren Aronofsky film at all. Nothing.
Even Black Swan.
Not one.
Wow.
Not even Black Swan. I'm very familiar. Natalie Portman. It's the ballet film. Very dark. But nothing. So I plan on enjoying all of those in the future, and then using this as a reference guide to kind of come back to and being like, this wasn't his directorial debut, but it was very early in his career, and it certainly set him up for very much of his future success because of how well this film did, and it just made him. His stamp was put on Hollywood immediately right after this, and the rest is not to say the rest is history because he's still making film now, but it's clearly he did. This was such an impactful film when it came out that he's able to use that success into other projects. All right, moving on a little bit. I want to talk about some of the cast. We have 4 major characters. We're going to kind of talk about each one of them a little bit, but I want to start with what is widely regarded as the best performance in this film, at least from a lot of the critics, and that's Ellen Burstyn and her approach to Sarah Goldfarb. If you're not familiar, this character is the mom in our film, and there is a harrowing experience with her and diet pills and an addiction to television, and what might also be chocolate and some other, just eating in general. Sweets. And just her portrayal was absolutely fan-frickin-tastic. The fact that she lost the Oscar that season to, wow, it's blanking. Hello, Aaron Brockovich, right? What's her name?
Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts. Was that the film that it was?
Yeah, Aaron Brockovich.
I think it was.
It should be.
Yeah, so that's not to pan Julia Roberts by any such imagination, but I do think that most people thought that Ellen Burstyn deserved the Oscar for this role, for this film in that year. Eric, talk to me about Ellen Burstyn, her performance here as Sarah Goldfarb, and just in general what that character means, just kind of in movie history and just kind of just the whole spiel.
Ellen Burstyn.
Bernstein, yeah, I'm all over it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that at this time, drug addiction was not portrayed very well in film. Not up until this, like, there was other, like, Train Spotting. Did that already come out at this time? I believe it did. I think it was a 90s film. Yeah, but, like, drug addiction just was not really portrayed as well and as, like, freely as it was in this film and as truthfully as it was. And I think this film covered it way more than, like, it covered it way better than a lot of the films of the time. Like, usually you get this emotional, sappy story where you get a redemption arc in the end and everything's okay. And, the reasons people got addicted to drugs are way more played up. Like, they're, crying about something in their life, and then all of a sudden they are like, yeah, I'll have a little cocaine on the side or something. And it just, I don't know, it doesn't really hit as hard as this. Like, it doesn't feel as truthful and as real as this. And then we get the character of Ellen Burstyn as Harry's mom and Sarah Goldfarb. And it kind of introduces this whole thing that we kind of know of now, but we don't really think about it. Like, we didn't think about it as much at the time, and that's like food and TV addiction. Back then in the 2000s, like, I think of other films that were coming out that, like, really crapped on, like, people that were overweight and at that time there was something called heroin chic in the modeling business. Like the look of that time was very skinny and it was very unhealthy. And people like didn't really think about how there was a food and TV addiction. Like people literally could get addicted to food, and she definitely has a food addiction. And that's where this all starts out. This film is about addictions in any sort of way and form. And then to treat her food addiction, she goes to a doctor to try to lose weight. And like nowadays, I think of like Ozempic, you know, these drugs that make people like not want to eat. And it's so ahead of its time in that way, where it's showing like how there is a legal way to get addicted to things. And we have like, we legally get addicted to food, we legally get addicted to TV, and then we can go to a doctor and legally nowadays get addicted to opiates, painkillers. We can legally get addicted to what she gets addicted to, amphetamines, to lose weight. And it's just like this kind of interesting look at, like, at that time, people didn't really think about that doctors are basically drug dealers too, in their own way. If you want to go to a doctor and get a script and like keep getting a script over and over again for your addiction, you could probably find doctors all around this country or whatever state you're in to fill that addiction for you. So it was just like at that time a very mind-opening thing for people. Again, like it's things that are talked about nowadays a lot, but that's because things like this film existed back in 2000 and it opened people's minds to it. So yeah.
100%. And I think that her performance in general, right, is the reason, not the reason, but a main reason why this movie is as compelling, is it really just shows you the completely effect that can have. And then to make it could be anybody's mom, right? It could be your mom, my mom, anybody's mom. Like that could have just been, you know, the quintessential Stepford wife, you know, picket fence, the whole 9 yards in American Standard. And now that person is a druggie, a strung out addict, like not something you would ever expect, but you see 100 times in today's society and on the streets. And this film, like you said, came out 24 years ago. And you still can watch it today. I literally watched it yesterday. And these lessons and these things are still so stark and so real. It's so insane to me that he was able to capture it in such a way that makes you do nothing but think about it, even 25 years later. And I think a lot of it is due with some of these performances. Kelly talked to me a little bit about Ellen and her portrayal of Sarah, and just kind of some of these character studies that we really see very from an early point in this film.
Yeah, everything that I thought that this movie was, I had no idea that this was a storyline that I was going to go down at all. I thought maybe the opening with her was just to portray the fact that her son is willing to steal from his mom. And I was like, okay, I expect that. I know what this movie's going to be about. I had no idea that we would stick with her for as long as we did. And if there's ever been a movie that makes you want to call your mom, this is like, oh my gosh, because she's alone. She's lonely. And I think that's the biggest thing too. And she has hope in her TV, but like when you don't have anything else going on, what else do you want to do but watch TV and eat sweets to feel better and to feel comforted? It's so relatable. And the fact that they kind of draw this, they show both of these stories happening at the same time. They draw similarities between the ability to fall into addiction when you think, well, it won't happen to me. For the audience, she can be almost a ability for you to find more sympathy for an addict, where I think a lot of people have I think it's a lot better now, but there's a lot of lack of understanding why this happens. And to see it happen to her the way that it does is like, if this movie didn't exist with her as well, then you might not have as much sympathy for everyone else addicted to illegal drugs. Where in this case, I loved the depiction of the doctor. The fact that when he prescribes these pills to her, he doesn't even look at her and he just looks right down at his clipboard, and it happens again later. I really liked that portrayal. I'm afraid that happens more often than we're willing to face. The doctors are just overrun. I like that depiction. Just like her, you don't think that what happens to her is going to happen. And like by the time you realize it's too late. Yeah, like you said, Kevin, like this movie doesn't get as successful as it is without her story going along with it. So that was a necessary element, and Yeah, so heartbroken for her. Oh my gosh, it was brutal.
It had to have been interesting being Ellen Burstyn in that role, in the sense that the other three main characters in this film are so young.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're so early 20s, coming out, all unknowns in the Hollywood scene for the most part coming into this point. And she is having to deliver this powerhouse performance.
Ellen Burstyn was in The Exorcist, by the way, so she's not completely unknown.
That's cool.
She was like
no,
a comeback
the
story.
kids.
Okay, for sure.
I'm saying that the three other kids compared to her.
What do you mean? She's
being
got a
in
whole
that
apartment building of old ladies with her.
Yeah, right. And that one scene where she talks about, like, I do the cleaning, I do the dishes, but for why? I don't have to.
Oh,
but I
my
just
heart.
do it. I was just like, ah. Anyway, we're talking about acting performances because that's what this film really features. And Jared Leto is pretty much, this is one of the earlier films for him. Eric, I didn't do a lot of background research on Jared Leto specifically.
He did a few before,
but this is his big
first
coming out,
lead,
right? This is his
acting
big...
film for sure. Yeah.
What did we think about Jared Leto in this film? Kelly, I'm very interested to hear from you when we get to you about, as far as like your first impressions, seeing as you knew who Jared Leto was clearly before this film, where a lot of folks were introduced to Jared Leto through this film. So I think that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition, I suppose. So, Eric, you're first. Talk to me about Jared Leto, and then we'll go to Kelly.
Well, there's Jared Leto nowadays and Jared Leto back then, which nowadays I feel like he's, just going to say this, he's kind of a little cringe, and he's known for doing kind of cringe things on set, and known for, his band 30 Seconds to Mars, and hosting these kind of weird festivals where he dresses up like Jesus, and he looks like Jesus. But either way, back then, he was kind of like a new and upcoming guy on the scene. He had been in things like American Psycho and Girl Interrupted. He was even in Fight Club. He was Angel Face. He was.
Oh, that's right. He was in Fight Club. I knew that.
But he had mostly been in supporting roles, and this was his big lead role coming out. And yeah, Jared Leto, he kills it in this film. And like, I will never say that Jared Leto is like not a good actor. Like I think he's always been a great actor, and then recently he's gotten a little bit more in his head, and it's made him go too far with some roles. But like at this time, he was really killing it with acting, and like in the next 15 years leading up to Dallas Buyers Club, I'd say he was so good. And yeah, like he portrays this New York kind of junkie just so well. Like I don't know how else to explain it. He gets the Brooklyn accent down really well, and compared to our last film with Woman Walks Ahead, where that was actually a Brooklyn accent in that film, our lead character, but she was in and out of it the whole time, and I think Jared Leto just like gets that Brooklyn accent down like perfectly, and it's definitely a perfect like example of method acting and like completely changing who you are, and this is Tour de France of acting in here.
Tour de France.
For those who don't know, Jared Leto actually, when you say method acting, he literally went full method. He lived on the streets of New York. He spent several days with the homeless population and the heroin addicts of the city. He starved himself and emaciated himself for the role. He wanted to put himself into a position where he had the same cravings and desires as the person that he was acting on screen. And you can see all of this in his performance in this film. I think it's absolutely critical for the way that this comes across, as if he absolutely embodies every aspect of a desperate heroin addict who has no other choice but to follow that route to where he goes. I honestly think that's one of the better acting jobs I've seen in a movie ever. He's just so good and convincing and desperate, and when he has to switch it on to be a loving son, he does. But even in that scene where he talks to his mom about giving her the TV, and he finds out that she's strung out, and he has an ability to be like, yo, mom, I don't want you to be strung out, even though I'm a junkie. Like, it truly did feel like he cared about her in that moment. And like, I forget it's a movie sometimes because like that truly would be dialogue that you would see between struggling family members in society today, or even then, it's absolutely crazy. I don't even know where I'm going with that. Kelly talked about Jared Leto.
I want to, before you said he was method acting to like those kind of extremes, I have thoughts about method acting where it's like, if you're an actor, I feel like it's your job So if you have to live it to do it, I feel like that makes you maybe less talented than if you can just turn on the character and turn it back off again. I think that takes more talent, but that's neither here nor there. I think he did a great, phenomenal job in this movie, and I want to bottle up this Jared Leto and keep him that way instead of seeing him become like the cult leader band member that he is now. I liked him in this movie. I've seen him in. Really have a weird love for the 2009 movie Mr. Nobody that he stars in also. And that was right at the start where I was starting to get the ick from him. But then I want those kind of Jared Letos I want to see more of, and less of him playing the Joker, and less of him in Blade Runner 2049. And I feel like he is not acting like he used to anymore. And now he's just kind of like a face that shows up. And even for like this like Joker portrayal, he's still like method acting and just causing havoc to everybody and using it as an excuse. So he's a crazy man, is what I will say. But crazy men make a good person to play this role. Clearly,
so Darren Aronofsky had obviously done not Pig. What's it? Pete.
Pie.
What's the word? Pie. Thank you. Before this, so Jared Leto had seen that movie or heard about that movie and knew about who Darren Aronofsky was and approached him about this role once he started reading the script when it made the rounds around Hollywood. And same for Marlon Wayans, actually. So we're going to talk about him. He also wanted this role specifically and auditioned, he said, over 6 times for the role in order to actually get it. I don't know all of the details on that other than both of these young and upcoming actors wanted to be part of this film and were able to do so. So let's talk about Marlon Wayans a little bit. He plays our main character, our good friend. What's the name? I don't have it in front of me. Tyrone C. Love. And he has aspirations of being a big-time drug dealer, but also is a mama's boy. And we see some of that in his flashbacks and some of the other things through his character. He takes care of Jared Leto's character in many circumstances. Why can't I think of his actual character name right now? Harry.
Oh, yeah.
Harry. And in general, I think Marlon just nailed his role as a supporting drug sidekick. Let's talk about him a little bit. Eric, what did you think about Marlon Wayans and his portrayal in this film?
So a lot of comedic actors, like when they finally make their breakout in a serious role, I would think it's usually pretty good, and and he did this like in spades in this film. Like I think of other like great breakouts like Jim Carrey and The Truman Show and stuff. Like he's not the main character in this. But, like, at this time, he was known for The Wayans Bros., which was just like a WB show, a sitcom. And then he did Scary Movie right around this time. In 1996, he did Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood, which is actually a really hilarious film from the 90s. I love that film. And, yeah, like, he was perfect in this, too. I wish we saw him in more serious roles after this. But he does such a good job of, like, portraying this guy that just, like, he clings so closely to his mother's portrait. It's so heartbreaking. Like, every single portrayal in this film is heartbreaking. But I think there was that scene with him and his mom when he was a kid. It's very early on. And she basically, he says, like, I want to be somebody someday. I'm paraphrasing. And then she's just like, I don't need that. I just need you to love me. And it just is this kind of like show of you should just love others, love people around you, love people in your family. And this whole film is just such a it shows how people have these motives and these goals and this compassion and so much about them, and then it gets slowly torn down by drugs. You walk through the streets of Detroit, New York City, wherever, and you see somebody who looks like they're strung out on drugs, and you know that at some point, like, they had these same goals, these same motives, and they had these same compassions about them, and then it was all slowly kind of torn down by drugs, and it just makes you sad, and that's what this film shows so much. And his portrayal in this film, as well as Jared Leto's, as well as Ellen Burstyn's, as well as Jennifer Connelly's, is just, it's such a good example of that.
Right. I want to segue away from it because I want to hone on to what you just talked about, how this film is about the death of a dream, the death of an idea. Even in the title, Requiem for a Dream, it's a death dirge for the idea of a dream being snuffed out by addiction. And that's intense. We see that in every single one of these characters, and we haven't even got to the other ones yet. Not quickly, Kelly, you can expand as much as you want, but let's talk a little bit about Marlon and his portrayal. I also want you to talk a little bit to me about how his relationship with his mother and just kind of how you thought he might have been the one to raise up above, but then wasn't. I don't know, just talk to me a little bit about him and just kind of some character development in general.
Yeah, I'll say when he first was on screen, I was a little afraid that we were going to get like the funny black friend trope. He's got that like late 90s, early 2000s accent that it's like every single black friend had in a movie at the time. And I had an idea that he was a comedy actor, and I was kind of a little nervous for the portrayal, but really relieved to see it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And that we can have actors still fit in that role without it being a stereotype. So that was good to see. He early on delivers a line of like, I don't want to be one of those people with busted up sneakers and snot dripping down my chin. Like, and I was like, man, like, I don't know where this movie's going to end, but the fact that that visual was painted right away and delivered like very, very organically, like someone really would say that and really believe it. Just that really like kind of stuck with me and haunted me. I love the love for his mom. It's not really clear to me if his mom is still around. I'm assuming not, because he would probably be with her. And I feel like there's kind of, because there's no portrayal of grief in this movie, like straight up. And I think that a lot of the time people can fall into addiction as a way to avoid processing grief. So the fact that that may or may not be the reason why he kind of gets into that, and it might be considered, he's the one with all the connections, so it is kind of his quickest route to success. These are all like options that are laid out and like things that could have happened, and it's all really, really believable. And then it's clear that even if he's like just no contact with his mom, he's still grieving a loss, or if she's passed, grieving a loss too. So with her still in the picture, maybe his story doesn't go the way that it does. But yeah, I thought that he did an excellent job. I've not really seen him. I've seen Scary Movie, but I can't say I necessarily remember him that much. I don't think I've seen him in anything else. So this is the only thing I've ever seen him play. So to me, he just is that character.
Isn't he in Scream?
Oh, Scream.
Right?
That's what
am
Eric said,
right?
right?
No,
Am I
not the
right?
no,
No?
not Scream, just Scary
No?
Movie, and then
Oh, I thought it was in Scream.
Oh.
Doesn't matter. One quick aside for Marlon Wayans. He talked in an interview that he based his character off of one of his own barbers in his life, who was famously ridiculous and funny, but also serious at the same time. And he also talks about when they were doing research for the film that he went to a heroin clinic and saw somebody who was a recovering heroin addict who was also ridiculously shredded and muscular and lean. He's like, oh, I can do both. I can have both of those things and make this character. And then he kind of used those real life experiences to develop his own character.
Nice.
All right. Somebody we haven't talked about yet at all is Jennifer Connelly and her portrayal of Marion Silver. Now, this is a really important role, I think, for this film because it shows the other side of the tracks. We need to have that for most times, for a lot of these comparisons, to have not, I know cake eater is a really weird term, but it's the idea that someone has the better of the world, but they still fall into the traps of the other side. And I think that her character and Marion did an incredibly good job of showing that it doesn't matter what your background is that you could still fall prey to the same traps that addiction shows, no matter who you are or where you are. And her story obviously takes a totally different path. So Kelly, I'm going to start with you, and then Eric, you can follow up secondly on this one, but talk to me a little bit about Jennifer Connelly and just her character portrayal of Marion and just kind of what she meant to this film.
Yeah, I agree that we do need, like, the well-to-do side. Like, she's not going to be a drug dealer. She's a rich girl, and to her, drugs are just something you do at a party. And I really like the subtleties of addiction creeping up with the scene of her waking up in the middle of the night just saying, like, what if we just, like, dipped into it just to, like, feel better. Like, she doesn't really think anything of it. And I like that Harry's character is always a little standoffish, but with one more push, he always bends the knee. And I think that that kind of, like, subtlety to the slide is extremely beneficial and makes these characters a lot more real. So for it to happen to her in the way that it did, I think it happens to a lot of people who think that drugs are just something you can do at a party, and then it creeps up faster than you realize, and then it's just a way not to feel ill anymore. That is really something, and then, you know, the sickness gets kind of more for her. And I think out of all the characters, we see it in the other two, and we see it in everyone over time, but for her, it is shown the most, and I think that that's really good. I even like the scene where she's standing in front of the mirror, kind of like looking at her body, and she only has a bra on, and the body language is low, shoots up, and now she's flexing her muscles in the mirror, and it just make like that like before and after, I think, is really, really good too, because it just makes it easier to just live your life. And that's probably all she thinks of it, is like, it's really not a big deal. Like, and it's not, I'm not a junkie. And she even says that to the point where she gets to the dealer's house, who, you know what's going to happen there. And she even tells him, like, I'm not actually into this or anything. And even to the point where she's sleeping with her shrink, because these are options that are available to her. And she is putting it ahead of everything else. And it's I'm glad that we have that side of it, definitely. And you know that, like, their love is, like, doomed to fail right at the start too, and that's a whole additional thing on top of it.
There's a lot of powerful scenes for me for Jennifer Connelly, but for me, the final scene where she's on the phone with Harry and asks if Harry can come home that day.
Yeah.
And you just know that he's not going to, and you know that something is going to go wrong, and it's just like the desperation in the voice, and it's just so heartbreaking. When you talk about the death of an innocent, this film really takes that idea of taking an innocent person and completely destroying them and making it, you watch it. It's so wild to think about, because she really was this just like super simple
She's cutting
individual
up magazines, making art.
Yeah. Or just being like, I've heard that I'm pretty so many times, but I really believe it with you. And I was just like, my soul, as you fall down this huge rabbit hole. All right, Eric, go ahead and tell me a little bit about your performance of Jennifer Connelly here as Marion.
For sure, yeah. Like, I think Kelly pointed out really well. Like, or no, you pointed out how it was about the death of a dream. This whole film, and then also, like, Kelly pointed out how she was looking at herself in the mirror, and then she was staring at herself, like, really sad and morose, and then there's that cut of her just doing heroin, and then all of a sudden she perked up and, like, she was flexing her muscles. She was very confident. And I think that's what this film, like, it portrays drug addiction so well, because it actually shows people in the same setting, in the same way, and these little cutaway scenes of just, like, people, like, it's just heroin being snorted up. And then it just reverts back to people doing the exact same things they were doing before. They're sitting in the exact same place, but they're just a little bit more perked up. And it just kind of shows just, like, what drugs do to these people, like, from one second to the other. And they're not really going anywhere. They're just, like, sitting in the exact same place. Yeah.
That perfect scene where he's in the car talking to his mom, Jared Leto, right? Or thinking about his mom, and he's breaking down in the back seat, and then all of a sudden he shoots up, and then he's completely stone-faced.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
and that's when at the point, too, it doesn't go from
too.
a little bit down to perked up. It goes from a little bit down to not anything.
to thinking about nothing,
Yeah.
like just completely away from the whole thing.
Yeah.
And when you're hiding drug
Wild.
addiction, you have to do it really quickly. Like, you're trying to cut into these rooms, and you're just trying to, like, you know, snort something or inject something really, really quickly, and then get back out into normal life. And the character of Marion, I think, is so impactful because it does show, like, the difference. Like, Harry is the person from Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. Mom is same place, like, more working class. And Marlon Wayans' character, Tyrone, I think he's supposed to portray somebody also from, like, a lower class area in Brooklyn. And I just feel like we need that other character to show, like, the rich person who she gets involved in the same things, and it's like the same end as everybody else. Like, we all end up in the same place if we go down this path. I just think that her portrayal from scene to scene, like we were just saying, she has so many dreams at the start of this to be a designer. Like, she's obviously the one that's most money driven of all of them. And she, like, really, like, I thought that they actually bought a space in Brooklyn, right? Like, didn't they buy a commercial space? Yeah.
Because early on, they're making money from dealing.
We don't see anything of that, like how it actually closed or anything.
Well, you know it, like, foreclosed.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we don't see anything about that, and then it just moves on, and I just think that, like, choice to do that is so interesting, too.
Yeah.
So, I just, like, yeah, she does a great job in here, and looking at, like, where she ends up to, it's a good portrayal of just, like, the objectification of women who are addicted to drugs too, and what they end up getting used for, and it's just a really, really sad story for sure.
And it's something that's still relevant in 2024, which is so bonkers to me.
Well, it's a tool at a woman's disposal that a guy doesn't have when, like, to get what you actually want. So at that point, too, you want it so bad that you're going to use every tool.
And I got to say also, 100%. Like, they're a big part of the story was their relationship and the death of their relationship, because like, I think that Harry, all he really wanted was to sell enough heroin to retire somewhere and to not have to work anymore, really, and that
to have a shop with her and to help her.
Have a shop.
They felt in love. They absolutely felt in love, and they wanted nothing more to run away and be together. Right, the death of the dream of their future, of their relationship, of the fact that they could escape all of this.
And there was these little sweet moments where everything slowed down in the film, and it was just their love, and like how much they loved each other. And then it was the eventual evaporating of that love, which just felt like so sad. And
I quite liked the techniques, like the split screen techniques that
I was going to ask about that.
It
right here.
Very much made me think about when we were watching the De Palma documentary.
Right,
now,
De Palma,
every single time there's a split screen, I'm like, De Palma.
Yeah.
But that is used so well to have like that really like sensual moment of the two of them in bed talking to each other. And
here's a counter. Here's a counter.
Okay.
Split screen is also used in another scene.
Between the mom.
Where Harry's about to steal his mom's TV.
Yep.
And that's not used to show their closeness. It's used to show their difference and their separateness. While they're connected by blood, in my viewing of it, it showed two individuals that are supposed to be close in a relationship but are separated by a barrier, that are separated by, in this case, a door, but also literally a frame-by-frame separation of the two. And then if you look at the split screen between Marion and Harry, I feel like it's a forecaster
forecasting.
Like this is going to forecasting of showing they're this close to each other, but they're so separate on where they're about to go that you have to give huge blocks in between the two and show them in this, like, why else put them in the bed and then literally frame by frame them away from each other? If you were going to show closeness, you would not separate them, but you clearly are going to set the viewer up to being like, they're as close as they can, but they're about to go separately, or they're still separate in that sense. So I just think that he was super intentional with those split screens, and it was really, what I just said.
Yeah. My takes on the first split screen with mom and son, like you said, it is the physical door separator, but also what's happening there isn't 100% happening to both of them in a scene. It's like two separate things happening to two separate people. And by putting them each individually that close to the screen shows that they really, like, aren't even thinking about each other in this interaction. They're thinking about themselves and they're dealing with their own emotional response. And it's something that's so big and so, like, all of this kind of stuff. It doesn't happen. It's not shared between two people. It's isolated.
That's a really good
and
point. I love
that's
that.
A big...
Why do you make me feel this way, Ma? Why do you make me feel guilty, Ma?
Yeah.
It's about him. It's not about her.
Yeah.
And then she is talking to her dead husband
Yeah.
and being like, "This is fine. It's fine." You nailed it. That's absolutely exactly what I think too.
And then separately for the split screen for the couple, I think this is the peak of their romance together. And I think the split screen here is shown almost in the exact opposite way. While this conversation is happening and we have two different bodies interacting, I think that it creates so much more intimacy to me rather than just having like an above ground shot of two people in a bed, which I've seen 4,000 times. It's like, I get it. This is a little bit different because you are intimate, you are close, the cameras are really close to their face, and then you're able to use one side or the other just to show the grazing, like, of the other body, of like these like sensual touches that are happening at the same time that these like sweet words are being exchanged, and you're forced to look at it really, really close. And it's the only time in the movie that we get intimacy between two people to that level. And I don't know, I think it was really sweet, and it was a really cool way to use that split screen again.
And one more thing, the interesting thing about where we start out the film is that, like, we later figure out that Harry had been selling her TV to Mr. Rabinovitz
over and over
again.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of dipping into, like, one part of his addictive lifestyle. And it was, like, one part where he was actually doing well for a little bit, where he was actually selling drugs enough to be able to make money and to be able to afford his own drugs. And then as soon as, Tyrone's boss, his drug dealer / Harry's boss too, gets gunned down, like, that all just falls apart. And it's interesting to know that we're only in one little part of this whole life. And that, like...
Cole would love that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're just kind of dropping in momentarily, and then we get dropped off later when everything falls apart, like, to its extreme.
100%. And there's something that accompanies this entire film that really is almost like an extra character to me, something that is purveyant throughout the entire film, and that is Clint Mansell's score. The music for this film, haunting, memorable. I don't even think those both describe what comes out at the other end. And it's not just our main theme of Lux Eterna, which is the very, very, very famous penultimate theme that gets used throughout the entirety of this film. It's all of the little pieces of music and composition that, like I just said, it truly feels like a character. There are moments where, if you've seen enough movies and film, you know that soundtrack is often used as a background piece. It is in the back. It is meant to be forgot about. It is meant to be a piece of the background assimilated with the rest of the film. In this movie, this soundtrack is to the front. It is the first thing you hear. It is what you associate with the scene, with the characters, and with everything you are going to take away from it. And I say this as a massive lover of music and as someone who takes a lot of meaning in the soundtracks of film. It is not overstated that this is one of the most legendary soundtracks of all time. All right, Kelly, you told me you had heard of this theme before. You had heard the main theme, like, in passing, right? It was something
like,
you were familiar
with?
It's
used in other movies. It's used in a lot of trailers, and it was used.
It's used in Lord of the Rings.
It's used in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
On I think a trailer for Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah, I think for the Two Towers.
And
yeah.
a trailer for an Assassin's Creed game. I think too.
I think so.
But yeah, I've heard this score a lot. I'll go out and say it right now. I think it's one of the best. I would consider it a classic piece. It's one of the best classical pieces of all time. It is so iconic, haunting, sticks in your head. It's a true Requiem. It is like, there's two other movies that do this to me with classical music. And let me also say, I love string quartets. I love string music. My favorite genre of music, symphonic metal. Big in part due to the violins and cellos and everything else. But we recently discussed Portrait of a Lady on Fire. There's a huge impact with Vivaldi music at the end of that movie that just like blasts you in the face with a classical score that it just is all encompassing like this. And the other one is in the movie Amadeus, he writes a funeral dirge for his dad. It has an impact similar. This movie, it's a crazy choice to have a really like classical piece like that. And I like the first few times we hear it, because I know it's coming. I know that's a huge part of this movie. But the first times you start hearing it, it still is caked in a hip hop sound or an electric DJ kind of sound, and it becomes a motif throughout the movie, and everything else complements it, so that when it does peak up and get there to you, it is a punch in the face. And there's no other instrument to me that tells you feel emotional than strings. They just are like the sound of emotion themselves. So that is a great choice. You pick that same exact score and have different instruments play it, and it doesn't have the same impact. So
100%.
Amazing choices all around. It's such a good piece.
I just think it's so unique that we get a piece that is written in 2000 that we won't be around in 200 years from now, right? But I think of another piece that was written in 1804 by one Beethoven. Ludwig van.
The great Ludwig van.
Symphony number 5. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Dun 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 dun. Like just the littlest that's a symphonic piece, but like I know it's a weird comparison, but like this is something modern that I feel like absolutely fits that vibe of something just I don't know.
Yeah.
It's epic.
200
wonderful.
years from now, when they can like look back and be like, what were the dramatic pieces of the century? Is like, this is a strong contender, if not the winner.
100%. I love it. And remembering what this film was when I watched it 20 years ago or whenever, in college when I first filmed it, that was a memory. And it's just been always present. And I could always tell.
And I gotta say,
on
TikTok, they've been using it a ton. So, like,
I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure
it's carried on.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move towards the ending here. The film's ending is notoriously bleak, right? We get some crazy scenes from all of our characters, all 4 of our main characters, absolutely descending into madness, in all different ways. Uniquely enough, we don't really have any other characters in this film. All of our other characters are either muted. They don't really have too much of attention. They're very basic. The friends, the doctors, the extra folks, they're often either blurred or don't really have any focus, meaning that these 4 characters and their start to finish, their climax to their ending is all that the viewer has to focus on. So we're getting here now. So what do we think about Aronofsky is trying to convey through these final sequences? How does it align with the other challenges and the other things we've talked about earlier in the narrative? And do we feel like all of these characters were buttoned up in a way that were either satisfying or just in general? Let's talk about the ending. Eric, you're first.
Kelly had her hand raised.
I wasn't paying any attention.
I was just going to make a sarcastic comment about how Tappy Tibbins is a character that's pretty important that we haven't discussed.
Yes.
Please, enlighten the folks about Tappy Tibbins.
Tappy Tibbins wants you to buy juice or something. He has three rules, and he has like a cult-like following. He feels like
something about sugar.
evangelistic.
McDonald, who played Shooter McGavin in Happy Gilmore.
Shooter McGavin.
He feels like an evangelistic preacher, but he's actually selling like Nutrilife or something. But
I feel like we talked about TV addiction, but just kind of like glanced over what that was.
Yeah, Tappy's a huge part of that addiction, and those kind of stuff is like literally made for that demographic of people, and it was a prevalent problem for a long time. I don't think so much anymore because they've.
You know what's replaced by though today?
Social media addiction.
Well, MLMs,
and
as far as like the whole selling and
absolutely.
These are the 3 steps to success.
This will make your life better. Just try it for 30 days. But
and how relevant is that now?
Yeah, 100%. But I never hear what rule number 3 is, and it's driving me insane. And it's supposedly the hardest one. So no red meat, got it. No sugar, got it. What's number 3? I just have to know.
Got it. That's why she's watching.
I know. And he keeps saying it's the hardest one. This is when people usually fall off. I'm like, I'm so in the pitch. Tappy, please tell me. And I never get it. But he does come out of the screen, so that's a thing.
That was wild.
I love that. That was that's A24 for me right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Herself in like a weird clown caricature coming out of the screen on top of that. Like
I love like the ha, and they're all like laughing at her and circling her
and deriding her and being like you and just laughing
at her things, at her house,
just feeding into her worst insecurities at her lowest moment. It was just like, oh my god,
that was really incredible. But I'll use that as a launching board to talk about how everyone ends. It is such a more brutal choice for everyone to survive it and to just be left in their suffering in different ways and knowing that they're not going to see each other ever again. That's so much more brutal, because I was like, okay, someone's going to OD, someone's going to off themselves. Like, one of this is going to happen. That's going to suck. But the fact that it doesn't is like, oh, we didn't take that route. In fact, everyone is going to suffer for what feels like an eternity. Like, they're all in hell, in different hells, and that's crazy. And I like, for Sarah, the mom, for her story too, I had to look up if that was a thing, and it's a stimulant psychosis when that happens, and sometimes it could be irreversible. That's terrifying. And the fact that they show the women that lived at the apartment with her going to visit and then just breaking down, oh my gosh, that hurt a lot too. And
it made me think, were they friends? Like, did they care more than she thought that she did?
Right.
If they were that upset, like, was she there? Were they a support system the whole time that she never actually was able to tap into?
Yeah.
That was my thought.
Because they didn't have to include that impact on them.
That was included for a very specific reason.
I feel like the woman that dyed her hair, that was like her true friend, but everybody else were kind of just like the peanut gallery, you know?
Yeah, but they felt like actually concerned at that point. Like, oh my god.
But there's also a thing with like women of that age, like that the way that you relate to each other is by kind of bragging about yourself and your family, and you don't ever really get to that deeper level. But it doesn't mean that they don't have any less care for each other, and they probably want to straight up talk to each other. But there's this whole social.
The fact they showed up at all, right?
Yeah,
they
they
came
didn't
all the
have
way
to.
to her,
Yep.
where she was. Like, that was a big thing.
Yeah, and when she's filling out her paperwork to get on TV, everyone's there, everyone's help. It was like,
and they were genuine. They were super happy.
Yeah. So her ending, and even like the showing the like electro like shock therapy or whatever that is, that was really, really hard to look at. Especially with like the piece in her mouth to keep her teeth from clenching. It's brutal to watch. And this would also be a good time to talk about the physical transformation that Ellen Burstyn went through too. I guess she had like a fat suit on at the start, but she also lost like 10 or 20 pounds by the end of her actual body weight. So she went through a big transformation, and her character looks like two different women. If I restarted the movie right afterwards, I'd be like, who is that?
Right.
So like that was all brutal. But yeah, like I said, the choice that everyone is just suffering it's just rough.
Yeah. I think of like early 2000 cinema and how that didn't really get portrayed much, like the very sad and like depressing ending to film. And at least in American cinema, like I remember back to my like film classes in college, and they would tell me that like French and Russian cinema, they would often have sadder endings, and it was just American cinema that always wanted the happier ending. When I watch this film, I just think about how this is like kind of a precursor to A24 films, where there's a lot of just sad and really degenerative endings, and it doesn't like leave you with a good taste in your mouth, but it leaves you thinking for days on end, and it gives you like something to think about and something to look more into. That's why I think this film sticks with a lot of people, especially at that time. There was not a lot of films that ended this way, and there wasn't a lot of films that kind of portrayed like perils of drug addiction, where it goes all the way down like the rabbit hole. Right. And it goes to the complete opposite end.
Do you want to know what a film that this made me think of, which is another film that we reviewed in an A24 Vibe discussion? Very similar year, actually came out the exact same year that this film came out. 2000. I won't leave you hanging, it's Memento.
Oh, okay. Oh. Yeah.
Meaning that there was just something away about the grittiness about the way it was filmed. It was very, not similar, but like, because they were both released in 2000 in the way that that was the way that the culture was in the time, there's some comparisons for me there.
I do think cinema was changing at this time for sure. And
right.
yeah, like people wanted more gritty, dark depictions of things. And yeah, that definitely 2000 to 2009 kind of led the way for A24 in 2013 to really like have a lot of these films that have very dark and gritty depictions of things.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I'm going to kind of open it up now just for anything else you want to talk on as far as what Requiem a Dream meant to you, just what the viewing process was, just the movie in general. We'll have time to talk about it during the review, but just anything we didn't touch on that you want to kind of toss in on, this would be the time to do it.
I feel
And if not-
I'm covered. Yeah, you
Yeah.
got it.
Covered.
I feel like I'm
covered.
mostly
Got
covered.
great.
I guess just again, the depiction of the refrigerator coming at Ellen Burstyn, Sarah Goldfarb, the portrayal of like food addiction and TV addiction in here as being on the kind of same level as heroin addiction, amphetamine addiction. Like it's all the same thing, just in different spectrums. And that's something not a lot of people thought about in 2000. And
True.
just like nowadays, we see how many obese people there are in the United States compared to other countries. And we, like, a lot of people judge obese people, but you got to look at, like, how food is an actual addiction. Sweets
And that's
are
what
an
he
addiction.
made the whale for.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, sugar's an addiction. Like, all these things are addictions. And it has the same kind of, like, decline into addiction as drugs do. It's just that, like, it's with things like alcohol, food, sugar, it's all a much slower decline. And it takes
Sure.
a lot longer to kill you. So,
One thing I'd like to mention is, I can't believe I haven't touched on this yet, but this entire movie is based on a novel
Oh, yeah.
written in 1978 by Hubert Selby Jr., which involves the exact same characters doing a very similar story, but way ahead of 2000.
was he arrested because he, for, like, obscenity or something, for writing this novel?
What?
I think it was. I don't have all the story in front of me, but
In
the point
America?
is that if this story was written in 1978, meaning that this was a problem in that time, it was a problem in 2000s. It's a problem now. It's a problem in all aspects of human society. This is a story that's transferable throughout all of human history.
He was,
and it's
in
crazy to think about.
1967, he was prosecuted for obscenity in the United Kingdom, and the writer of Clockwork Orange, Anthony Burgess, was one of the people that appeared in his defense as a witness. The jury's conviction was later reversed on appeal, but the novel was banned in Italy. So, and he was a heroin addict, and eventually got sober.
Wow.
The things you find out by listening to A24 on the Rocks.
And yeah, the only other
about
thing, when I picture that refrigerator opening up, that whole scene, when I'm thinking about it again, it makes me think of the Beetlejuice dinner scene.
That's fair. That's fair.
It's like suddenly that reminds me of it.
Daylight come and
Yeah.
on go home.
Which is so, yeah, it's so different.
I mean, this film did so many different things, right? It did
really
like
did.
side-by-sides and close-ups and stop motion, right?
I feel like
It
I
used
watched
nudity.
a few
It
different
used-
movies.
Yeah. I just think it's fascinating that the first time you saw this film was 2024.
Yeah.
I think that's
it's like-
really cool.
There's some that I'm like, I save because I know that they'll be good. I still haven't seen 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Like, there's certain ones that are just like one day on my
I
list.
know we've talked about this in the past, though, too. When you watch a film for a review versus watching a film just for the sake of watching a film, does that change it at all?
Yeah. Well, when I watch them, even when we're going to discuss it, I don't take notes or anything at the time.
Sure.
If I'm gonna, like, I'll go back and watch clips later, but I try to just watch it like a viewer. And maybe that's better or worse. I don't know. Maybe I probably should watch it more like a reviewer because I'm doing
No,
but
not for something like this,
Yeah.
especially something like this, which you know is legendary. You know is a film that stands the test of time. It doesn't matter what Rotten Tomatoes tells you when you go into watching a film like this.
Right.
Like, you really do embrace it for that.
Yeah.
And it was so like for me watching it a second time, it's like I remember being completely affected by it the first time I watched it 20 years ago, and like now coming back again around and being like equally affected by it again is just super unique and wonderful, and that's why films are so cool. And I can't believe I didn't care about movies until I started this podcast.
Yeah.
Or you started this podcast and invited me. But that doesn't point.
Because who you are as a person changes over the years, and that's what's kind of cool about rewatching movies is you're watching it through different eyes later. And that's pretty neat.
Absolutely. All right, that brings us to the conclusion. We're still going to rate this one. Why not? It's very A24 inspired. Clearly, Darren Aronofsky's gone on to do A24 projects. It's a movie that probably would have been A24 if A24 existed in 2000. So we're going to go ahead and rate it just like it's an A24 film. I'm going to go ahead and start it out. I love this movie when I first saw it in 2008. I'm going to pick a date and a year, and I think I'm going to say 2008 is when I saw it. Doesn't matter. When I saw it forever ago, I loved it then, and when I watched it again last night for this podcast, I loved it again. This film is epic. It's legendary. It's iconic. It's one of those that when you throw it up on, I'm not talking top tens, I'm talking about just influential movies in general. This is absolutely one of those films. It features some famous individuals that go on to do some great work. They may be a little crazy now, but at the time, it was pretty excellent to see their performances. We see some tour de forces. We see some epic portrayals of some really, really heavy subject matter. This film has a legendary score. It is filmed and shot in such a way that is going to stand the test of time as far as movies in general. And it goes without saying that it deserves, the high praises that it gets. A24 for me, for a A24 film that would have been an A24 film had A24 existed. I say A24 like 5 times in 10 seconds. So, bam! A24. I'm done. Eric, you're next.
Yeah. Like, I have to think about the time that this was released in and how, like, inspirational and different it was for the time. And I like have so much respect for it, and also like Darren Aronofsky doing this kind of fast cut editing, a lot of musical like montages and stuff like that. Like, that was different for this time. It was very experimental filmmaking. I have a lot of respect for it. There's so many good acting performances in it too. So it definitely lands between A and A plus for me. I feel like with recent ratings, A plus gets me like top 50 films of all time. I said top 25 earlier, but I'm going to say top 50. So either way, I'm going to give it an A plus. I think this definitely like inspired films for generations. Like I feel like it's the Beatles of drug addictive filmmaking, and it's just kind of like one of those things that you can't like make other films after without it, and it inspired filmmaking for so long, so I love it.
Abso-frickin-lutely. Kelly, bring us home.
Yeah, this is an example, like Eric said, of experimental filmmaking, making all of these like choices that are completely, no one really did it that way before you, and you're making them for the choice to drive your narrative that you're telling deeper in. So you're not making it just for the sake of it. Everything's intentionally made to cover what's kind of a uncharted territory of storytelling shown through a movie. I will say that this movie, its reputation came before it. It lived up to the reputation, but it wasn't the movie I thought it would be at all. In fact, it was a lot better, due in part to the experimental nature. And when experiments are made, a lot of the times it is for the worse. But it's a risk you take, and the reason you make that risk is when it does land, it is incredible, and you make something really magical and something unlike anything else. And I think that they just like it's knocked out of the park when it comes to every other aspect of movie making. So the editing, the soundtrack, the acting, we touched on all of that. The factor that I always take into consideration is, did I care about the characters? Yes, too much. How dare you? Was I emotionally invested? Yes, too much. How dare you? All both of these. So really incredible. It deserves all the praise that it gets. I will say people talk about it like it's gonna like psychologically damage you, like it's like this like scary movie. It's not. It's just something that should be watched if you care about movies at all. This made me excited about when movies are really good, when choices are made for like it's artistic. It really is, and it's not being made, for money. It feels like really authentic. And this is, I think, a great success of when movies are made, what they can do for us, and how they can stand the test of time. I know we say that phrase all the time, but like I said, experiments made and knocked out of the park. If it was A24, it would be A+24.
Love it. I do find it fascinating that we didn't mention this as a horror movie at one point in the entire podcast up into this, but it is often classified as a horror movie. Okay. I think so. I would say so. Like, if you think about what else, you can't classify as an action film. It's not
psychological
thriller,
drama.
Psychological thriller.
Yeah.
Drama.
I mean, the ending, right, with the gore, I guess, and the different aspects. I don't know. It's up to the audience to decide. Yeah. Leave a comment. You tell us. This is a great segue. If you think this is a horror film, write and subscribe. Put us a 5-star and tell us why you think it is or is not.
Give this movie a genre.
If you are listening to this episode, you randomly selected one of us of many podcasts that have talked about this film because it is legendary. We're adding it because it has A24 reference, but honestly, this film is just talked about widely because it's so great. Thank you for listening. We certainly appreciate your patronage for this podcast. Rate and subscribe, 5 stars. Leave us a comment. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for hanging out. This has been A24 Rocks. I'm Kevin. That's Eric. That's Kelly. Have a great night.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
A24.